Mr. Professor, are such expert events like this one here really need to take place?
They have a use. Many times there's a part of the public that is aware of the issue, but really has not had a chance to look at it deeply. And this is a chance to see people that you don't expect to see address that issue, or groups of people to disagree. And what's important about this is that the issue that's being discussed is the nature of Poland and its future, and they likely not have heard an American speak to that in the way that I did, or others debating the issue.
In your speech today, you said about roots, foundation of nationality. For me, the best interesting was the beginning about mother and father as a roots of this idea. Can you explain us this opinion?
Well, there's no one alive who doesn't have a mother. And there's no one alive who doesn't get their language from their mother and father, who doesn't get their first beliefs, who doesn't hear about the history. And those first 4 years, let's say, this is the time when your personality is formed. And you become who you are by what you learned from mother and father. And they tell you who your enemies are, and your friends are, and your duties are, and your rights are. So this makes you who you are, and you never leave that behind. So I was born in Hungary. I was raised by parents who only spoke Hungarian. And everything that I learned as a child was about Hungarian values. And then I entered American society, and it was different. But always, in some sense, I'm still drawn back to what my mother and father taught.
We talk about larger topics, about politics. Is the legal system reform necessary in the country with the history of 50 years of communism? And if so, how should this reform be carried out?
Well, the question of reform is utterly dependent on the people. What does the public want? So it's very improper, inappropriate for a foreigner who will not live under those laws to give suggestions on how to change them. Because the nature of law begins not with the law itself, but the perception of the public, of the nation, of what they want it to be. So the answer to me is there are many ways under liberal democracy to craft the laws. But to be effective, they must have the belief from the people that they are fair and legitimate. And that is more important than any particular regulation or law. So this is something that is the responsibility of the Polish people and no one else to overtake.
Thank you. Are the countries of the size of Poland capable to facing the global interests? For example, international corporations which drain the country's budgets?
Well, I mean, the answer is that you have no choice. You will face the global system. And you must have allies with common interests as you. So your responsibility is to find those people whose interests are in common with you. And as their interests or your interests change, you be prepared to move. You must be dynamic. You cannot survive in this world locked in to a particular set of relationships. They can't be permanent. So right now you're getting close to the United States, and that means that you're a little more distant from Germany. And later you may get farther from the United States. The problem of Europe is they want everything to last forever. And surviving in this world requires flexibility, requires that you not be locked in forever.
Mr. Professor, I would like to ask you about your books, about your vision to the future. What would you say to those people who claim that the ideas of political scientists like yourself do not work?
Well, if they don't work, and our ideas are irrelevant. If, on the other hand, you describe them and it's what happens. So here's the difference. There are political scientists who describe how the world works and what will happen. There are those who tell you what should happen and how the world should work. So those people are not scientists, they are simply citizens having a desire. To the extent that my work has any value, it must prove itself in being predictive. And so I would argue that the concept of working, you have to define what you're doing. Are you working to predict the future? Are you working to persuade people to follow a particular course? So the answer is, I have no interest in what course people follow. I have only interest in being right about what will happen, and that's proven or not proven.
The last question is about my favorite science, history. Mr. Professor, you use often historic examples in your speech, in your vision, opinion. What is the position of history in understanding today's world?
We would not be here except for the past. So it's like going to a movie and sitting down, never seeing the first part of the movie, not seeing the last part, and trying to understand what's happening just from what is happening in front of you. The answer is that we are all creatures of our history, one way or the other. We may like it, we may not like it, but I wouldn't be here except for my past. And if I don't understand the past, I don't understand who I am. So from my point of view, history is simply the story of how we got here. Now, you can make it so complicated you can't understand it, but the simplest fact is, I mean, you want to know in your life how you got to the point you are. So asking that you forget everything that happened before doesn't work. Same with history. It is the framework of what we are.
Thank you very much for our interview and visit in our studio, Forum Studio. I wish you the best debates in this forum and Krakow and Poland.
Krakow is beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.